Колеги, доброго ранку.
Good morning, colleagues. Ukrainian Crisis Media Center begins its work, and the topic of the first briefing sounds like as no changes to the constitution under the martial law. And Volodymyr Vasylenko, Ph.D. in law and Plenipotentiary ambassador of Ukraine, International Criminal Tribunal judge. All the rest of the participants of this briefing are invited to the stage. Dear ladies and gentlemen, you have the text of the statement. You can read it. Just a second. It's important information related to this press conference, so I beg your pardon. Yes. You can read our statement. I would like to draw your attention to such a point. In front of me, I have a document, and it's a statement to citizens of Ukraine, not to the president or the parliament, not to the citizens, it was published before presidential elections in Ukraine in May 2014, in which Dmitro Pavlychko, Yuri Sherbak, Volodymyr Vasylenko, Igor Yakhnovsky, Miroslav Popovich, Vyacheslav Berkhovetsky, Lyubov Golota, and the number of other representatives of Ukrainian intellectual community called citizens of Ukraine to vote in elections and to support to have the president elected in the first round. I didn't name your name. So now the same people in the same sequence, the same group signed also this statement. Why? Because supporting Poroshenko for the president of Ukraine now, it's completely unacceptable. His stubbornness to bring through the parliament the vote on amendments of the constitution that provide some special status for self-governance and in some districts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and that is there would be a special law of Ukraine for that. Those efforts are explained that if we don't do that, then it will be very difficult for us, and then under the threat there will be Minsk agreement complete implementation. Those agreements and peaceful resolvement of that situation which we have as a result of Russian aggression. This is fake arguments. Wrong arguments, because Ukraine is compliant with Minsk agreements, and on September 5 they signed Minsk agreements, the first package, and in September 2014 the Parliament of Ukraine approved the law on specifics of local self-governance in some districts in Luhansk and Donetsk region. We have this law, and it will come in effect when Russia complies with its obligations according to Minsk agreements. So when they pull all the troops from Ukraine, when they stop applying weapons, when they stop fire, when they cease fire, and assist Ukraine in controlling the border, Ukrainian-Russian border. So the idea of this statement is supporting the beginning of the process of implementation of amendments to the Constitution of Ukraine as to decentralization. And of course, without mentioning that about special local self-governance mode described in special law and in the Constitution, we should support efforts of Ukraine to regulate to resolve the situation, which is caused by the Russian aggression. So the issue is put in such a way: Ukraine should announce moratorium for amendments to the Constitution until that moment until Russia occupants pull out the troops of Ukraine, and until we have full control over the Russian-Ukrainian border. Such, if we phrase it, such word which it will encourage our Western partners to take a tough position as to Russia, which does not comply with commitments, Minsk commitments. Thousands of times they've abused the ceasefire. After we signed Minsk agreements more than 500 kilometers. The area of occupation was enlarged, and military contingent was enlarged, and they're still shelling upon civilians, upon infrastructure, and upon forces of Ukraine. This is an unacceptable situation. That's why, under such conditions, to introduce such amendments to the Constitution, it's shameful, and it's dangerous for national security of Ukraine. Because my colleagues, I hope they will add, I invite the judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, Viktor Shyshkin. Thank you. Viktor Shyshkin, Judge of Constitutional Court of Ukraine in resignation. Dear colleagues, in the society there is a discussion whether we have conditions or not of the martial law, and as it says in Article 157 of the Constitution, which Constitutional Court and other bodies should take into consideration. We make amendments to the Constitution. I believe that we have it, and I have my special opinion to conclusion number 1 and of June 16. And these conditions of the martial law, they are not only factual as Volodymyr Andreevich, but they are legal also. And in that separate opinion, I made a list of 17 laws, legislations, 15 laws, 15 decrees of the President, and other legislation in our country. They don't take into consideration sub-laws, and otherwise there would be more than 100. And all those 70 show that we have the martial law. 70 legislation. I will not repeat them. They meet those laws on martial law, which was approved last spring, and the conditions are mentioned. And the judge Vasylenko of the Constitutional Court, one of the new judges, who expressed his separate opinion as to the conclusion number 2 related to decentralization, because from June 16, and he gave other numbers that in a month and a half the Parliament and other bodies, they also approved some legislations, and they confirm legally that we have conditions of the martial law. And separate opinion, I know that it was not read very often, but it says from March 2014 and conclusions to in Ukraine we passed 30 laws which reflect something which is which is reflected to the martial law 24 regulations of the Parliament of Ukraine, 24 decrees of the President, 16 regulations of the Cabinet of Ministers, 21 directives of the Cabinet of Ministers, and if you had at least C in math in school, it's more than 130, and we don't consider sub acts like in a Ministry of Defense, etc. So do we have conditions of the martial law or not? And the President has not introduced it with his decree. I put that indirectly there is accusal to the President that he doesn't perform well as the President of Ukraine and the chief commander. So all these manipulations around amendments to the Constitution, this is an effort to run away from responsibility and to do his job when there is a mask of aggression, which he is supposed to do. Our memorandum is focused on the analysis of this situation, and this is our internal voice, and on behalf of from heart, mind, or whatever to Ukrainian people that they take us to a wrong way. Hero of Ukraine, former political prisoner Stepan Khmara, you have about 3 minutes. Thank you. Why so quickly President is trying to push amendments to the main law of Ukraine, the Constitution of Ukraine? No doubt that this is the plan of Putin to legitimize Russian enclave of occupied territories of Ukraine, which will become a source of destabilization and gradual ruining of Ukrainian statehood, and making it weak politically, economically, psychologically, with all the consequences. So that's why the strategic ask is to break the plan of Putin and not to allow to change the constitution of Ukraine under any condition. So under any circumstance, we call all the patriots of Ukraine to become very active and to prevent that crime to Ukraine, because that is a strategic task Putin would like to achieve through peaceful capitulation of Ukraine. They suggested to us to give up, but in different ways. Our Western partners took the line to support the plan of Putin, only because they would like to get rid of the conflict in the east of Europe and in the cost of our interests. So our national interests, and which was many times in our history, and we know the results of that. So that's why I ask all to be very attentive to this, despite summer relaxation. As soon as the Parliament will consider that, we should become active. We should prevent the effort to change the constitution. This is a crime to Ukraine and also to the future. That is a threat to our sovereignty. Thank you. Thank you, Stepan. And now about the head of the Maidan of Foreign Affairs, Bohdan Yaremenko. Bohdan, you have 2 to 3 minutes. First of all, my presence here shows that I support different generations, and because the generation before me, I supported the President Poroshenko last year. And now, with this generation, or my generation, my teachers, I call to prevent, to stop rape in the constitution of Ukraine and laws of Ukraine, and violation of abusing elementary logic, because when this is amendments which were dictated by foreign side, this is we will lose subjectivity which we earned by lives of those who died during Maidan and during this war. And it doesn't make sense to speak and to analyze implementation or not implementation of Minsk agreements, because Minsk agreements are not, it's not a document, and we say it in our statement, which requires from Ukraine an implementation, because it's not a compulsory, it's not an international document, it's not an international treaty. So realization of the scenario of amendments to the constitution and the will of the state aggressor and some partners of Ukraine replacing the main source of power, and that Ukrainian people can have serious consequences, not only international, because I mean encouragement of the enemy and our partners to force Ukraine through political pressure to change these things in Ukraine. But there will be serious internal political consequences. We should not subdue to illusions that Ukrainian government or the top, which say that there's nothing special about Donbass, because it speaks about specific local slogans, and there is no other region of Ukraine which will not have, if they have, they will have some legal, they will not have such a, that will encourage other regions of Ukraine, other political forces to have aggressive and anti-center policy, and also it will bring to disintegration of Ukraine. So, from the point of view of internal relations and of internal policy, realization of imposed on Ukraine scenario of amendments to the constitution under the dictation of aggressor country and other international players is a way to lose Ukraine subjectivity and independence. I join my senior colleagues, the colleagues, the generation of my teachers, and it's a very emotional request to do everything possible to prevent that scenario in Ukraine. Thank you. Civic activist Stetskiv. Dear colleagues, our statement is an appeal to the President of Ukraine and to the Parliament of Ukraine. On the other hand, it's to Ukrainian people. President of Ukraine, the Parliament of Ukraine have all reasons to stop ruining of constitutional process in Ukraine. The President could call back that draft law. The Parliament may not include it on agenda. When it takes to the agenda, can take out point 18 from the draft amendments, and then it will be directed again to the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. So the President of Ukraine and the Parliament of Ukraine, they have all tools to stop that. And in our statement, we call MPs, first of all, to be responsible to the situation in Ukraine. And on the 25th, during the session, it's during the plenary session, they should stop that process. Understand it, and we understand that external pressure on Ukrainian MPs, we are forced to appeal to Ukrainian people, and we call all civic organizations, political parties, intellectuals, and known people, and just citizens of Ukraine to unite for the sake of preventing ruining of Ukrainian constitution and also breaking Ukrainian state. And we are convinced that in case the parliament and the President of Ukraine don't listen to the voice of civic society, to the voice of Ukrainian people, then there will be an issue of responsibility of the top officials of our country. And also we believe that in case the situation achieves the vote of those for those amendments, 300 of votes of the MPs in Ukraine, then there will be preconditions in Ukraine to a broad patriotic national opposition to this government. And we would like that, we wouldn't like that to happen. That's why before they consider that in the parliament, we make such a statement, and we call MPs to stop on the halfway to ruining Ukrainian state. Thank you. Thank you, Taras. And finally, I invite the head of Ukrainian Legal Society, Oleg Berezyuk. You have 3 minutes. Thank you for the invitation. Dear colleagues, I support what my colleagues told. And I would like to underline that the President of Ukraine, first of all, should be the President of Ukraine and should stand for the interest of his nation, but not to be at the leash, guided by at the leash of our allies even. There is the war in Ukraine, and we can stop the war if we can consolidate all the forces of the nation to prevent a foreign aggression and to prevent losing our independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The President, as a guarantor of Constitution and laws of Ukraine territorial integrity and independence, should organize that process, first of all. At present, we don't see that process. Instead of resistance to the enemy, the President brings some unclear amendments to the Constitution, and he tells that somebody is demanding something from us. He says that we need to make these amendments because it's impossible to run reforms without these amendments. And even without amendments to the Constitution, we can run reforms, and the Constitution is not an obstacle. And more of that, under the conditions of social political crisis, in the conditions of the war, Article 157 of the Constitution directly says that under such conditions, no amendments to the Constitutions can be introduced because they cannot be rational. And so I'm completely sure that the President and the Parliament still have a chance to stop and not to allow ruining of the country. The President should act in the interest of the nation, Ukraine, and then he will be the President of this country. If that doesn't happen, as Stetskiv told in Ukraine, there will be an opposition, and that will be a patriotic opposition to this government. Thank you. Thank you, Oleg, and thank you for participation of the press briefing. If somebody would like to summarize, you have 1 minute. As to the list of those who support this statement, it's not a final list. A lot of people agreed after we developed the text, and the collection of signatures will continue. One more moment as to this list. We have, in addition to Viktor Shyshkin, we have Mykola Kozyubrich, a member of the Constitutional Court and of this Constitutional Commission. Also, Ivan Timchenko, former first head of the Supreme Court, Constitutional Court of Ukraine, and member of this Constitutional Commission. And I'm also a member of the Constitutional Commission. Thank you. Colleagues, journalists, if you have any question, please, the floor is yours.
Please be very brief and don't forget to introduce Dmitro Kravtsov. It's a question to Mr. Vasylenko as a member to the Constitutional Commission. How do you think, who is the author of the constitutional changes? Is it the presidential administration, our Western partners? The text which was developed by the Constitutional Commission did not contain these provisions, and in the text which was drafted by the Constitutional Commission did not contain any specific indications that the self-governance in the region, in some regions of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast shall be set by the by special law. Thank you, Volodymyr. Thank you, participants. We wish you success, and we have to finish this press conference.